As the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Good, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know to whom the previous comments were directed, but it will change the start of my remarks at least. I think it's demonstrated that those transgender youth or those gender-confused youth, that when we come alongside them and encourage that confusion or reinforce that confusion or deceive their parents about that confusion, we solidify the emotional strains, the psychological strain, and the problems that happen as a result of that. Why don't we follow the God-created science of two genders? Why don't we help a child who is confused about their gender work through that? Study after study shows that most of them will find their way back appropriately if we just support them in the right way in that confusion, instead of trying to help them to be more confused about how God created them. God makes no mistakes. And it's really a travesty that we would try to politicize children in this way, and that we would have school systems come alongside and support these children in their confusion and deceive the parents about that confusion. And we would also have entertainment companies, politicians, and all the rest try to do that. Instead of teaching the children the truth, instead of teaching them the truth and teaching them the God-created design of two genders, which we all know to be true, we get into instead harming these children by supporting them in this confusion in a negative way, quite frankly. Mr. Secretary, who do you think, changing gears, should be permitted to illegally enter our country?
I'm sorry.
Who do you think should be permitted to illegally enter our country?
Well, you're talking about violating the law if you're saying it's illegal. Why would we permit anyone to violate the law?
I agree with that. We're certainly doing that to the tune of 2 million last year. We're helping those illegally in our country to the tune of 2.2 million last year. So you don't think anyone should be allowed to enter our country illegally?
Well, you've mischaracterized what's happening, because we have laws, and so long as
it would be great if we would actually enforce and follow the laws that we have. That is correct. Do you think anyone should be turned away who tries to enter our country illegally?
Anyone who doesn't have the authorization to be in this country does not have the right to stay.
If you had your way, how many illegals would you allow into our country?
Again, there are migrants.
Do you think there should be some limits to that? What is the end game? How should it be, or should it be at all limited?
May I respond?
This budget, the president's budget, the fiscal year budget, the 23 budget that he's proposed, includes a $150 million cut for immigration customs enforcement, provides $4 billion, however, to reward Central American countries that are flooding the U.S. with illegal immigrants. However, contains zero accounting for the amount of taxpayer dollars that are being spent on flights to transport illegal aliens from the border to the interior of the country, making every town a border town, every state a border state. My home community of Lynchburg, Virginia, we just had an illegal alien convicted of murder, MS-13 gang member who was permitted in this country illegally, making even my community in Lynchburg, Virginia, a border town, a border community. This budget also contains zero accounting for the amount of taxpayer dollars that are spent on housing for these illegal aliens, on top of the already $2 billion that was diverted from the American Rescue Plan to the border for COVID-19 testing, vaccines, therapeutics, and so forth for non-Americans. The president's plan to further reduce border funding for our agencies will require HHS to help in a greater capacity to process these illegals into the country, not to prevent, but to help process them, facilitate them into the interior of our country. Do you think the administration is prepared to effectively vet the surge of illegal aliens that will result from this reduced enforcement funding in addition to the termination of Title 42? Are we ready for the surge?
Do you wish me to respond to the question?
Go ahead.
We are doing everything we can to make sure that we deal with any migrant child who's unaccompanied that comes into our custody from DHS.
We're prepared to go from 7,000 a day to 18,000 a day.
We have a legal
I know those are not all UACs or not all children, but
we have a legal obligation to make sure that any child who is unaccompanied does not stay in DHS detention.
So all of our efforts
for
to
3
be
days.
to get them through, to get them in the interior of the country instead of trying to prevent this from happening. Does the president's budget seek to combat the fentanyl that's pouring across the border at all? Because with this reduced funding on the border enforcement piece of it, he said in the State of the Union that he wants to fight the opioid epidemic. We're having it come across in record numbers, killing a record number of Americans. Is there anything in the budget that's going to help enforce or combat the fentanyl that's pouring across the southern border?
I hope you're not implying that our Border Patrol and Customs Enforcement agents aren't doing their job at the border.
I am absolutely declaring that we are not letting Border
Gentlemen-
Patrol do their
gentlemen's
job.
time is-
Absolutely, we're not letting Border Patrol do their job. Absolutely.
Gentleman's time has expired.